Welcome back to BYoungMinistry.com, to another blog and to another podcast. Welcome to those who access the podcast through Apple Podcasts, Rumble, Spotify, and YouTube. Today we continue in our study of the Gospel according to Matthew. We're in chapter 6, verses 19 through 21, which reads, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasure in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." That's Matthew chapter 6, verses 19 through 21. Today we continue our study of the Sermon on the Mount. In this teaching, the Lord Jesus arranged the thinking of his hearers regarding their understanding of the law of Moses. As we know, the law of Moses was sanctification teaching, meaning it was teaching designed to get the culture of God into the souls of people. But through the years, it had been distorted by the religious teachers of Israel. These supposed spiritual leaders dropped the ball when they were not careful to include their hearts in the equation. Instead, they put themselves up as the arbiters of truth, essentially taking God's role from him. This resulted in religion, which always shackles and carries us away from God. In verse 19 of today's passage, we read, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, and where thieves break in and steal." In our last study, we heard the words of the Lord Jesus on the topic of fasting. He finished that thought with the idea of being rewarded by the Father. In today's passage, he built upon that concept, drawing our attention to treasure. The rewards of which he previously spoke from the Father are where our true treasures are to be found. But what we amass here on earth is temporary and will not pass into eternity. It is only when we invest in the eternal does this change. Being wealthy is not sinful. The Bible never says money is the root of all evil. No, it says the love of money is the root of all evil. Greed is the culprit. Now, in that day, wealth was often measured by one's ability to accumulate and store goods, such as grain and precious metals. The concept of storing treasures was not only a practical concern, but also a reflection of one's status and security. Treasure could also refer to spiritual wealth, such as wisdom and righteousness, which are more enduring than material wealth. Here, the Lord Jesus informed us to not keep to ourselves the blessings that God has chosen to give us. God rarely blesses us with only us in mind. He knows that if our lives are all about receiving, we will become so fearful of losing what we have that we will become unloving. But if we recognize that it is better to give than to receive, we will know the type of life that he died for us to have while here on earth. The life the Lord offers with him at the helm of our decision making is a life free from worry and anxiety. When we live our lives under God's grace rather than the law of Moses, we will recognize that God has given us all things with the ultimate goal that his kingdom might advance in this world. When we hoard things, we will be preoccupied upon concentrating on our kingdom. This is what causes us anxiety, and the solution is to loosen our grip on those blessings that God has given us and to be free to be a blessing to others. As with a tube of toothpaste, the tighter we squeeze, the less we will have. Investing in eternity will render much greater blessings than those of the temporal space and time of this fleeting world. We must live accordingly. Living to be a blessing redirects our hearts from seeking the blessing for ourselves to being more selfless. The stress of learning to be defined by the Lord is far less restricting than that of the flesh, for the flesh is never satisfied. In verse 20 of today's passage we read, "But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, where thieves do not break in and steal." The only way to accomplish that which will endure into eternity is through faith in the God of the Bible. When we trust Him, we will believe that what He has said is true. Thus we will be defined by Him when we obey Him. We will not be perfect at this, even though God calls us to be perfect. I mean, think about it. If God were to call us to something less than perfection, would He be God? Nothing earthly can be taken to heaven. Faith is a vulnerable disposition, and faith alone in the God of the Bible is the only thing that bridges the gap between the earthly and the heavenly. Here, the Lord Jesus restated the same words as the previous verse, but changed them for emphasis. When the two verses are set side by side, the contrast is clear. When we live by faith and we invest in eternity, the Lord assures us that it will matter into eternity. In verse 21 of today's passage we read, "For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." We all have our loyalties, the things that are most valuable to us. As a result, we all live for something or somebody. And to the degree which we love something or someone will be the degree to which they will define us. We know something or someone is defining us when we take inventory and discover what or who we obey. When the Lord Jesus was asked to summarize the great command, He quoted the Old Testament when He said, "Love God with all your heart, soul, and strength." Again, we will never, this side of heaven, love God totally. So relax. We attempt to love Him fully, knowing we won't, this side of heaven, fully. Down deep in our hearts is a tug of war. The tugs are created by the temptations that cry out for our heart's allegiance. The realm we invest in most defines us most. There's nothing wrong with possessing wealth or protecting that wealth for the future. In fact, Proverbs 13:22 reads, "A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, but the wealth of the sinner is stored up for the righteous." We cannot save up for our children's children if we do not possess wealth to some degree. The real issue is, are we masters over our wealth, or is our wealth master over us? We must be wise concerning earning and saving, but also let our heart be directed by the Lord above all else. This is what reveals where our hearts are regarding the possessions we have in this world. Money can be a wonderful servant, or it can be a terrible master. My friends, I trust this blog and this podcast are helping you in your walk with the Lord. If I can be of further assistance to you, shoot me an email at BYoungMinistry@gmail.com. Hey, have a great day.